Welcome to the Grounded Guidance Podcast, where we explore the power of living aligned and from your intuition each day. I'm your host, Karen Williams. Every day you receive hundreds of intuitive messages guiding and empowering you to live a life in alignment. Are you listening? Through lived experiences, ongoing self-reflection, and enriching stories, I am joined by extraordinary people and thought leaders in their field who have embraced the magic of following their intuition and are sharing their light with the world. Trust that these conversations will meet you right where you are, and consider this your nudge from the universe to listen. Join us. Welcome, Kristy Sumner, to the Grounded Guidance Podcast.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you having me tonight.
Yes, I'm so excited to chat with you about all things paranormal.
We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, we are. It's going to be great. So I'd love for you to start off and tell us a little bit about you and your background, and then how did Soul Sisters Paranormal come to be? I know you've got a lot of different pieces of this, but specifically Soul Sisters Paranormal.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Kristy Sumner, and I am the founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal. And my background before Soul Sisters was extremely eclectic. My doctoral dissertation was on aviation security and biometrics for airport access control. I've been a professor at University of Central Florida, at Metro State College of Denver. So it's different things in that regard. And then through a series of life events, kind of led me to where I'm at right now. And in 2013, my sisters and I, we formed Soul Sisters Paranormal. We all come from a research-minded background, and we found ourselves watching popular television shows at the time, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and such. And we found ourselves asking, why didn't they ask this question, or why didn't they use this technique? So we said, if we ever had the chance to go on a paranormal investigation, we'd jump at that opportunity. And we routinely take girls' trips because we live in different parts of the country. And in 2013, we were taking a trip to Moundsville, West Virginia, which is where the West Virginia State Penitentiary is located, which is reported to be one of the most haunted locations in the country. And so we had a family friend that actually sat on the board of that facility. And he said, while you're here, why don't you take one of those nights and stay in the penitentiary and see if you can connect with our resident spirits? So we did that. And we left that experience with what we felt was compelling unexplained data, i.e. footsteps in cell blocks when we knew that there was nobody there, doors opening and slamming, disembodied voices. And so because of that experience, we wanted to formulate what we considered a professional paranormal investigation team. And by that, I don't mean we get compensated, because everything that we do is self-funded, but we wanted to try to elevate as best we could this subculture of paranormal into a more of a mainstream conversation. And so we're driven by history and the historical locations that we get to visit. And then we couple that with any unexplained phenomena that occurs during our investigations over the night.
Wow, that's amazing. I really appreciate that you take a very evidence-based approach to this. I think it's really important with the advent of all of these shows on TV, and so many of them prey on the fears of people that I don't often feel like the shows do what a true paranormal investigation is designed to do. So thank you for that, first of all. I think that's really, really important. Having done one myself, it's really important that you have evidence-based techniques, tools, standards to go by. So you have quite a presence, and it's important that people understand that, especially skeptics coming to the table.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. We really do try to take that approach. And, to your point, I think a lot of the shows now, and moving into YouTube and TikTok as well, those instant gratification shows where there are people out there that just go into these locations for what I call a cheap thrill or a jump scare, and they want to bring their audience with them. And to me, that doesn't allow you to have a connection with the history of the location, which is extremely important. And I think a lot of people are trying to get into this to get the likes and subscribes, and that's not to disparage those people who do that. If you want to do that and that's the approach you want to take, that's fine. But there are us in the community, what we call the paranormal community, who really respect the history. We go into it for the longevity of connecting with that location rather than going in for three or 4 hours and just doing a quick live video and then you're out. I think to your point, it kind of does a disservice to what we're actually trying to do, which is really have that historical connection as well as that connection with the paranormal, the spirits that really want to tell their stories.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate the historical perspective. The paranormal tour that we did just last month, there was so much history in the location that we were in. And that's really what fascinated me, or what kind of drew me to the location. And then it was an ongoing conversation about really who's there and what happened here and what really needs to be told. What is the story that needs to be told rather than like you said, the jump scare, which it has its time and its place, but
Agreed.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. So a little bit more about the work that you do. So you do professional paranormal investigations at a variety of different places, private residence, historical locations, nonprofits across. Are you in Florida or Tennessee?
Right now I'm in Tennessee.
Okay. Is it across wherever you're at in Tennessee, Florida? Is it across those places?
It is. Right? It's across the country, really. I mean, we've gone all over the country to different locations. Mostly the ones that we travel to are those what I call larger commercial locations, those that have a very significant historical event or historical presence, but then also they tout the fact that they have paranormal as well. And so we've gone to a lot of those locations, such as, the Villisca Axe Murder House, the Lizzie Borden House, St. Augustine Lighthouse. I mean, we've gone to these locations. What we really want to do there is really, again, tell that historical perspective, maybe a little bit differently than what's currently out there, and then really couple that with that paranormal presence and really kind of build our portfolio, if you will, and hone our techniques. And then we use those when we do residential or business investigations.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm curious about your whole idea of not charging for this service. And is it an ethics thing? Is it crossing an ethics boundary with people that if they charge something that if you charge something that they would in fact expect some sort of
and I kind of understand where you're going with the question.
Tell me that my place is paranormal, that kind of thing. Tell me that I can put that we have ghosts here, kind of thing.
Well, right? Exactly, and it really gives, in my mind, a different connotation than what you're doing, right? Yes. So, for example, let me just put it this way: our YouTube channel is not monetized. I do that for a very specific reason. The reason is I don't want somebody to come back and say, you only put these things out there because you want likes and subscribes. No, I don't, because I'm not monetized. And therefore I can, to your point, ethically say what we're putting out there is the unexplained. We're not fabricating anything to get views for our YouTube channel, because it's really, it's for us to put it out there as kind of to help people and show people where we've gone and what we've captured. It's not for monetary purposes. Same thing with residential or businesses. To your point, it's not to go out and make money off of people's perceived paranormal experiences. And I say perceived because in a majority of the locations, we can find things that are environmental that people might not think about. So we don't want to make money off of somebody's belief or their real paranormal experiences that they're having in their houses. That's just really not what a paranormal investigator does.
So I'm curious about the environmental piece. Are you talking about when you can tap into water?
No, I'm talking about like an actual environmental factor. So for example, we were called in to investigate this business, and he said, he just opened this business, this legitimate storefront that he had. So it was a brick and mortar location, and he had been in it for about 2 or 3 weeks. And he had security cameras up. He had, display cases and mirrors and frames and everything up. And he called us and he said, oh my gosh, my place is haunted. My night vision video cameras, they go crazy at night. I can't explain this. Can you come in and investigate? And so we said, sure, absolutely. So we did a 4-hour investigation in the location. and all of our equipment that night, there was nothing that was indicating a presence of paranormal. We didn't feel anything. And so we're like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to leave our night vision video cameras in the location and leave and see if we capture anything. So we set some up. And so the next morning I called him and I said, did anything happen last night? He's like, oh my gosh, it was so active. Everything was going off. And I said, okay, well, give me the timestamps of when your cameras went off and I'll cross-reference them with mine, see what we got. And so what I found was that the way his storefront was positioned, he was sitting perpendicular to a road that had a high volume of U-turn traffic during the night. So when the headlights would come into his storefront, they would bounce off of these mirrors and essentially blind his night vision video camera and then turn them back on. So if you weren't thinking about that, you could perceive that as something messing and being squirrely with your camera. So he just didn't think about it. And I said, I think if you either move your cameras or take the mirrors down, what you perceive as a haunting is going to stop. And it did. And so that's what we go in and do first. We look for those environmental factors first, because a lot of people first, they just want to be believed that something is going on. And that's what we do. We go in with that belief, but we also go in and say, okay, what other things could be causing this? Is there airline traffic? Is there kids in the neighborhood, dogs, the UPS truck going through something that environmentally could be causing it that you're not thinking about? And so we do a lot of that first, looking at the environment. And then when we can control for those things, what we're left with is the unexplainable. That's what we'll present to the business owner or the resident owner.
So I'm curious about your fascination with the paranormal. When did that start, and what's your take on it? Like, what made you do a deep dive into this whole world?
My sisters and I, we've always had a fascination with it. I think just by the nature of the fact that we're all going to die and we really have no concept of what's next. I am a Christian. I do believe that there's a heaven. And so I really wanted to figure out if these television shows are legitimate, what are they experiencing and why are they experiencing it? And so really just kind of watching, the advent of ghost hunters and ghost adventures and stuff. And again, looking at those things from a research perspective, we wanted to experience that for ourselves to see if we could either replicate what they were finding and then take those techniques a little bit further. And so that's really kind of how it started. We've always had an innate sense that there is something with us, that energy can't be created or destroyed. And so I think there are some instances where the spirit, once an individual passes, the spirit doesn't ascend automatically. There are some instances where a spirit can stay behind, and that's what we're trying to communicate with. And so really, we've always had that fascination. It was just really that first paranormal investigation at the West Virginia State Penitentiary that really propelled us to what we're doing now.
Does your sister have a research background?
Yes. So the Soul Sisters Paranormal actually started with 5 females, my twin sister, our younger sister, and 2 female family friends. And so my twin and I, we both have PhDs. Michelle's a lawyer, Cara's a lawyer, and Kim is a master's holder in education. So we all have advanced degrees on the team. And so that, again, really allowed us to use some different techniques that might not have been used at that point when we first started. And that's kind of how we wanted to approach it. Not just go in and say, throw this chair across the room or I'm not going to believe you're here. Really go in and sit down and try to have a conversation with these spirits that want to talk to us and tell their story.
Do you feel like that you have been, at any point along your fascination with paranormal, been trying to do you ever go into any investigation trying to debunk and I don't mean that like with the experience you told me about the gentleman in his business. I mean more from I really don't believe that's what's happening. We're going to dispel any sort of myths around what's happening in a location.
We go in with what I call a healthy skepticism, especially if we've seen videos or seen TV shows where somebody has gone in and found something that say is demonic. So for example, we investigated Prospect Place Manor in Trenway, Ohio. And we just happened to go there about a month or so after a popular filming person had been there. And in the on the 3rd floor of that building, when we were doing the walkthrough with the docent, there was a dead pigeon up on that third floor. And he
Mm.
said, we're not touching that because we were told it's a demonic pigeon. Like that just doesn't compute with me. A demonic pigeon does not compute with me.
Right.
And so those things, I think what we try to do is say some of these things have been sensationalized by popular media.
Right.
And we want to kind of bring it down a notch and say, hey, that's not what this is about, right? These are spirits that have a story that want to communicate with us if we're willing to listen and not provoke and just have that conversation, go in with a sense of empathy. And I think because of that, we have gotten some very interesting results, some very interesting data from these locations that we've investigated. But to answer your question, we go in with a healthy skepticism of what others have found and see if we can come up with our own evidence from those locations.
Yeah, that's really an amazing way to do it. I'm curious, do you, I'm gonna take a left turn here right now, but I'm curious, do you have any sort of psychic abilities or mediumship abilities?
We don't. I don't profess to have any of that. Now, I have a twin, and I think she and I have a different bond than most siblings or most people on a paranormal investigation team do. So I think we have a different connection. And I also think that the fact that we're an all-female team, I think that females are more empathetic to situations. And I think because we don't go in with bravado, we don't go in with, chest thumping or anything like that, we get a different result than an all male team or a co-ed team would get. Again, just really kind of driven by that innate sense of empathy to really talk to the spirits that are there and try to have that conversation with them. We go in with the idea that these individuals were at one time human, right? They had a human existence, and for some reason they're still in this location. And, the very core of human existence is to be recognized. Nobody wants to go through life feeling invisible. And I think that's the same thing with the spirits that we're trying to communicate with. And so I think because we go in with that, like I said, I think we get a different result than some teams. But as far as having empathic abilities or psychic abilities, no, we don't have anything like that.
I appreciate that you say that the core, we want to be seen. Human beings want to be seen, but it's no different in the spirit world. So that's a beautiful way to tie it together. Let's talk about the tools and the equipment that you use. I'm fascinated by this because of my own paranormal investigation that we did using tools. So take us through what works, what you use, why you might use a different tool at a different location, like a trip meter or a REM pod or something. Like, how do you set up an investigation and what tools do you use? Might be too much.
No. So, we do have a variety of pieces of equipment. And what's great about some of these locations is what we try to do is we want the spirits to act on these pieces of equipment, but it's even more fascinating if we can get different things to act on multiple pieces of equipment. So just to start off, the very first thing that we always have with us are voice recorders. The moment we enter a location, as soon as we cross the threshold, we've got voice recorders going, and they're going from the moment we start. I mean, even when we're carrying in luggage and whatever, our voice recorders are going, and then they don't stop until we leave the location. Because for us, EVPs or disembodied voices are really, in my mind, the hardest pieces of evidence to debunk. So for example, if I go into a location and I know I have 5 females with me, and yet I'm capturing a man's voice or I'm capturing a child's voice, that's very hard for me to debunk. A light anomaly, we can find causes for that if we look hard enough. If we really try to want to come up with some type of an explanation, but voices are very hard to debunk. So voice recorders are our number one piece of equipment. We do have K2 meters, which are, they measure electromagnetic frequencies. We've had great luck with these, especially in locations where there is no energy or power that is on to that location. Theoretically, they should not go off at any time, but yet we go to these locations and we have them, something is acting, some type of energy source is acting on these items. Same thing with the REM pod. So for example, we investigated the Ma Barker house in Central Florida. We were the very first team to investigate that location. And that's the site of the 1935 shootout between Ma and Fred Barker, two members of the Barker Karpus gang, and the FBI. So it was the longest shootout in FBI history, and it culminated with Ma and Fred being killed in the upstairs bedroom of this house. Now, currently the house has no power. There's no power to it. There's no water to it, right? So we knew we had complete control of that environment. But yet when we were using the REM pod upstairs, it was alarming. So energy was acting on it that we can't explain. There was no energy source around it. I mean, we were sitting back about 6 or 7 feet from it, and yet it's going off on command and it's stopping on command. So that to us, again, very hard to explain. So that's a tool that we use. To me, the spirit box, a lot of people, there's a controversy about whether or not to use that or whether or not it's a valid piece of equipment. Generally speaking, it's an AM/FM radio that very quickly sweeps through frequencies. So when you turn it on and you hit the sweep button, it goes as it's sweeping through frequencies. The idea is that spirits can use that white noise to communicate with us.
Interesting.
Again, a lot of people don't subscribe to it. We do. Going back to the Ma Barker house example, we were up in the upstairs bedroom, and I asked the question, what happened in this room? And through the spirit box came the phrase, "They murdered us, we the ones dead." That entire phrase came through, and as you listen to it, you can hear the frequency still changing behind that phrase. So theoretically, you should never hear a phrase because it's going to a different radio station every 1/8 of a second. And so to have a complete phrase like that come through is fascinating to me because I can't explain it.
Do you normally have just one? And on our investigation, we had just one, maybe 2 words coming through. We didn't have. Is that pretty typical? Where you have
It is.
one? Okay, but that whole phrase is pretty. That's unusual.
It's extraordinary. Yeah, it absolutely is. And, I know a lot of people that have told me that they don't subscribe to the spirit box. I show them that clip and I say, explain this to me then. How is this coming through? And again, you can hear the frequencies changing behind it. Where is this coming from? How is that entire phrase coming through? And it's germane to the situation, right? They were murdered in that room.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So why is this coming through the radio at the precise moment I'm asking it to say it? And so again, I can't explain that. So for us, the spirit box, we love it as a tool. We have a device called an EDI box, which it has several functions on it. It has an EF meter, an EMF meter, like the K2s. It has a geophone on it, so it measures vibration. So if anything touches it or walks around it, you can see the vibrations. It has a thermometer, so you can see the difference in temperature. And it also has a pressure gauge. So if the pressure changes at any time in the room, it'll go off. So we use that. We use a series of night vision video cameras. And we really do that because we want, eyes and ears on any room in the location that we can't physically be in or that we're not physically in. So we use a lot of that, mainly for documentation purposes.
So are lights out in your investigation? You all wear night vision headlamp type things?
We have flashlights, but we also use body cameras. So we have our perspective, and we use body cameras for 2 reasons. 1, so we can get our perspective, and 2, it gives us a timestamp of where everybody is in the location. So for example, if I'm going and watching a video from, say, a cell block stationary camera that we had set up, and I see a light anomaly, I'll go back and look and see where everybody was when that light anomaly occurred. So we can have a positive, so I can say, okay, Jenny was walking down the adjacent hallway, so that's probably her flashlight. Or if nobody was in that area, I'll start to say, okay, what caused this light? What was this light anomaly be from if it's not one of us? And so we use it really as that timestamp mechanism as well. Let's see, we use laser grids. We set those up in conjunction with our night vision video cameras. Really, the idea is that we're trying to catch any spirit or apparition that would cross a doorway or hallway or something like that. I'm trying to think what else we use. That really kind of rounds out our pieces of equipment, honestly.
So when you, I have a question about the spirit box. When we were using it, we had differing agreement in our group about whether it was actually providing legitimate information. And then we would be talking about something, and then something would come through the spirit box and be like, oh yeah, okay, this is really, that would confirm
Mhm.
kind of the conversation we were having. The second floor of this building was in a really rapid state of disrepair because they had water damage, and there was big
Oh,
gaping holes in the floor. And one of the people I was with was like, we need to get out of here. And I didn't feel it at the time, but then on the spirit box, it came up and said, you need to get out. And I
wow.
thought, oh, wow. I mean, so while some
Wow.
of it didn't make sense, there were parts that it was okay. All right. I'm paying
Mhm.
attention.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and that is that does have the tendency to happen. Like for example, when going back to the Ma Barker house,
mhm.
if you watch that video or you watch some of the clips that we have from that video, there's several things in that sequence. One of the first things was, what happened in this room, and and it came through. They murdered us. We the ones dead. And I said, can you say the name Blackburn? And because Blackburn was the alias that Ma and Fred used to rent the
Oh,
house. And
wow.
through the spirit box, it said Hebrew, and then it said Blackburn. So I'm not sure why it would say Hebrew. I don't know what that context would have been, but right after that, it said Blackburn. So
Wow.
there you do have to kind of weed out some things with it. But like I said, for us, it is a tool that we use, and we've had some great results with it.
Yeah, I found it to be it was fascinating. Some of it didn't make sense. I appreciate your all female paranormal team because we had a male on our paranormal team, and there were parts of the investigation that told us to get out. And in the particular area we were in, it was the nuns' quarters, all female nuns' quarters, and we were told that that was an area that generally the men don't do. They don't like it when men in a physical body come into that location. So I thought that was interesting.
Mhm.
It's always interesting to kind of listen with a keen eye, right?
Mhm, it is.
Um, so okay, so tell us about what are some common things that you experience on some of these paranormal investigations.
Really, the most common thing that we get, as I said before, are disembodied voices. Whether or
Mm,
not we hear them physically in the moment, or whether or not we pick them up when we go back and listen to our voice recorders.
mm.
For us, when we go back and do what we call our evidence review, we listen to every piece of audio that we captured, and we watch every piece of video that we captured. So for example, if I've got 10 voice recorders running for 10 hours, I'm listening to 100 hours of audio.
Wow.
We don't run it through any type of a software. We listen to it as it was recorded. And so that really allows us to pick up on things that we did not hear in the moment, or if it's a stationary voice recorder in a room, when we're not there, we hear different things, and that happens quite frequently. Um, for example, we were at Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, and I,
Mhm.
I absolutely love Fort Mifflin. It
Hmm.
was a Revolutionary War fort that was very strategic for George Washington, and the little ragtag band of revolutionaries that were there really did
Mhm.
a great job of holding off the British Armada, so George Washington could get to Philadelphia. So there's a lot of history there. It was
Yeah.
also used as a Civil War fort as well.
Hmm.
And so we had voice recorders in each of the casemates on the fort. And casemates are subterranean rooms that were used to hold munitions, so they would stay cool
Like a root cellar kind of place?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, but
yeah, underneath,
just
yeah.
very cavernous.
Oh,
Some of these
okay.
are because they had to hold barrels and barrels of gunpowder,
Wow.
so extremely cavernous. We had voice recorders that we left in each one of those. And during the night, we captured so many disembodied voices when we
Wow.
knew that we were in other parts of the fort, and we knew it couldn't be environmental because again, these things are underground, and there's nothing penetrating noise wise penetrating these walls. So we captured a lot of things there. So disembodied voices are something that we routinely get. Every now and then we'll get a light anomaly, and
Hmm.
twice we've been able to capture an apparition, which has been fun.
Wow. That's pretty did you see it with your own eyes, or was it only back on the recording?
Well, one was at Fort Mifflin, so that was on the stationary camera. We actually had
Okay.
a shadow figure walk from one side of the casemate to the other, and he actually crossed the laser grid beams as he walked through.
Wow.
And then the second one was at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in
Mhm.
Petros, Tennessee, and everybody there, we actually saw the shadow figure with our own eyes in the moment, and we were fortunate enough to get it on
Wow.
camera. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I'm curious about the disembodied voices because we
Mhm.
experienced this on our tour as well, but it is really hard to make this out. It seems like you need a trained ear to really understand what you're listening to. And if you're listening back to 100 hours of tape for some of these investigations, do you slow the recording way down to be able to hear it? Do you speed it up? How
Mm-mm.
do you just have a trained ear where you know what you're listening for?
It really is that, because I'll listen to it like when I'm reading or something like that. I'll just lay on the couch with a book and just listen to it while I'm reading. And 99.9% of the time, all you hear is silence or just
Hmm.
really low frequency static, like a voice recorder in the dark, right?
Right.
And for me, when I hear it, it's instantaneous. I mean, I know that there's an interruption in that silence for me. So I've just been so used to over the years now listening to it that I can pick up pretty quickly.
Wow.
Now, depending, so what we do is when I hear it, or Jenny or whoever's listening to the audio hears it, we'll clip that section and
Mm.
we'll send it to the group and say, okay, do y'all hear anything? And that's the first thing. If everybody hears anything, that's number one. The next thing is, what do we think we hear?
Okay.
Because, I may hear a waterfall, Jenny may hear a watermelon. So we kind of had this back and
Ah.
forth, and it's really when we get the consensus of the group that on the video will say, this is what we think it's saying. Now somebody else may hear, water chestnut or something. And so it really does kind of depend on your perception. But for us, we put in there, we believe it's saying this, and
Mm.
that's what we believe it's saying in the moment.
So that's important for the people that things you're investigating for other people. So you
Mhm.
can provide that evidence back to them
Mhm.
as well. But that it is hard. It is hard to make out what is being said. And to
Mhm.
me, it felt like it would need a trained ear, somebody like you that's done this for a very long time to hear some of the things that we were hearing.
Yeah, and well, I mean, some of them, we've been in locations where you actually hear them audibly, and it's
Mm.
very easy to make out. So, for example, we were in North Carolina, in Balsam, North Carolina, at the
Mhm.
Grand Old Lady Hotel, and this was a
Mm.
hotel that was built in the 1900s. A very opulent hotel, 3 stories, grand staircases throughout, 100 guest rooms, and we had the entire building to ourselves for a whole weekend.
Mm.
So it was myself, my twin sister Jenny, and my friend Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. So the three of us were the only three on the property for an entire weekend. And so on Saturday night, we decided to sleep because we could, sleep in any room we wanted. But we decided to sleep in a suite, a 2-bedroom suite up on the 3rd floor, which was adjacent to the most haunted hallway in the building called Henry's
Mm.
Hall. And so the way the suite was structured is there's an internal bedroom that had 2 queen beds, and then an exterior room that had 1 full bed, but that room had the door to the hallway.
Oh.
Yeah, so Jenny and I had to walk through that room to get to the double beds, and Miranda slept in the one full size bed, and she was closest to the door. So we had the door shut. I had a night vision video camera on the outside of the door and a night vision video camera on the inside of the door. So we had positive control of the environment.
Mhm.
And you hear us talking for about 20 minutes. We're talking about when we're going to leave the next day, when we're gonna start packing, when we're going to go to breakfast, and all that stuff. And then we say goodnight. And about 10 minutes after we say goodnight, a voice says, "Please don't go." And we all heard it. And Miranda said, "What was that?" And I said, "There's a man standing outside a door." And she's, "Yeah, that's what I thought." But there's no man there, right? We have positive control. There is no person there. But yet we have an intelligent response. He's responding to what we just said. He's asking us to please don't go. And it was audible. All three of us heard it. And it's a great EVP.
So with that, you get that kind of evidence. Do you then launch into more trying to have a dialogue with these disembodied spirits, or do you just leave that like what prompts you to take it further with something like that?
For that one,
Yeah.
honestly, Karen, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that was one where you're sitting there and your hearing gets very acute and you're waiting for the next thing to happen, right? Because you just
Mhm.
know something's gonna unlock the door and walk in. So in that on that particular one, we didn't engage. We just kind of
Mm,
laid there and then we went to sleep because I mean, at this point, it's like 4 in the morning. But if we hear a disembodied voice, if we can physically hear it, we'll start asking follow-up questions. Absolutely.
okay.
You know,
Yeah.
explain that. So, for example, I'm sitting here in the historic Scott County Jail, which is in Huntsville, Tennessee, and I co-own this location with my business partner and best friend Miranda from Ghost Biker. And so, because we're here all the time, at night we'll go up and just do a little impromptu investigation. And we were upstairs one night, and there was a murder that happened in this community in the 1970s, and the victim, her name was Rhonda, and I just yelled out, "Did anybody know Rhonda?" And a man's voice said, "I knew her." Right in the
Mm,
foyer. Miranda and I are the only two people here. And a man said, "I knew her." And then, so we start asking follow-up questions. How did you know her? Were you related to her? Did you go to school with her? So we asked those type of follow-up questions. We did not get any response after that,
mm.
but that was a very audible response
Yeah.
initially that encouraged us to have follow-up questions. So if we hear them audibly, we will engage and try to follow up.
So this is it the Scott County Jail?
Yeah.
Was that a working jail back in the 70s?
Yep. So this is
It
it's
was.
it's the historic Scott County Jail in Huntsville, Tennessee, and it was constructed in 1904. It was in operation as the county jail until 2008,
Oh,
and it held both men and women. And so then it really sat vacant until 2021 when Miranda and I opened the museum.
wow.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'm curious about when you go to these historical locations, how much time do you spend studying the location before you show up to do a paranormal investigation? So you have an understanding of who might be showing up that night.
We really do a copious amount of research before we go. I mean, at least a couple of weeks, because one, to your point, we want to know the location, we want to know the history behind the location, and any prominent spirits that are said to be there. But then using the events to get some different responses.
Mhm.
So, for example, we'll go back to Fort Mifflin. In Fort Mifflin, like I said, it was a Revolutionary War fort, but they did hang a guy by the name of William Howell during the Revolutionary War. They hung him on the fort for treason. And
Mm.
so we knew that going in. We knew that he was held in solitary confinement in one of the casemates there. So we knew that we were going to try to communicate with William Howell during that investigation. But we also used the research that we gained beforehand to ask other questions of other people that served time on the fort or that fought on the fort, really trying to come up with names that we could try to communicate with one-on-one. And then again, using the events itself to try to get different responses. So, for example, after the Revolutionary War, during the Civil War, it was used as a prison for both Union and Confederate soldiers. And
Oh.
so we were in one of the casemates. And so to try to establish a timeline, we asked the question, "What's the name of your president?" And we use that question
Oh, wow.
we use that question on every investigation because it allows us to narrow a time. And so when we asked the question, "What's the name of your president?" we got the response of Lincoln. So now we know that somebody in that casemate was loyal to Lincoln, right? So we know that ergo it's a Union soldier
Wow.
that we're speaking to. So our research allows us to ask these questions. It allows us to really formulate our investigation. It allows us to come up with trigger items. So, for example, like I said, William Howe, we knew he was in solitary confinement. So we took bread, water, cigarettes, because those are probably things that somebody in solitary confinement would want. So that our research allows
Wow.
us to do those things.
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard of trigger items.
Mhm. Yeah.
Excuse my naivety.
No, not at
That's
all.
really that's really interesting. I think
Yeah,
that's
It's one of those things that that try to get a response from
Mhm.
somebody who's in the building or the location. One of the ones that I'm really proud of, we went to, again, West Virginia State Penitentiary. That was our first investigation, but we've been back several times since then. And so one of the spirits that's said to inhabit West Virginia State Penitentiary is a guy by the name of Red Snyder. And in life, he was a horrible guy. He was the leader of the Aryan Brotherhood. He killed his family.
Mhm.
Anybody that he wanted dead in prison ended up dying. But so they had him in solitary confinement. But he had two vices in life. The first one was tobacco, and the second one was watching Days of Our Lives. So every
Hmm.
day they would wheel the television in front of his cell. He'd get to watch Days of Our Lives. And they'd take the TV out. So what
Wow.
we did is we actually downloaded an episode of Days of Our Lives onto our laptop, and we took it into his cell. And I said, Red, we know you like to watch Days of Our Lives. We downloaded this episode for you. We're going to let you watch it, and we're going to go do something else on the other side of the building. So I hit play. It ran Days of Our Lives for an hour. After that, my laptop only had an hour battery life, and on purpose, because I wanted it to die after the episode. So we let him watch the episode, and when we came back about 2 hours later, we walked in and we said, "Did you watch the episode?" And we got a male's voice saying yes. And
Mm.
then later on during that interaction, we had some really cool interaction with our K2 meters. And I said, "Okay, we have to go now, Red, but thank you." And then we captured a man's voice saying, "No, thank you." And I think we got that voice because we acknowledged what he liked,
Mm.
and we gave that to him in an attempt to get a communication going with him. And
Hmm.
I think he respected us enough to know that that's what we were trying to do. So
Wow.
that's what a trigger item is.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's I appreciate that a lot because and I appreciate the idea of asking who the president is because you can often go in with preconceived notions about things,
Hmm.
preconceived notions about the history or what your bias is towards a specific historical event. So
Hmm.
really creating a neutral environment and asking these questions that allow them to respond from their perspective rather than,
Hmm.
who are you and how did this happen? And, you know, asking the questions that you know from a historical perspective, but maybe there's things you don't know, which
Right.
is really
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah.
And if you have a location like Fort Mifflin or even the jail, right? I mean, like I said, it was from 1904 to 2008, and we have numerous spirits here. Well, if I get the answer, my president was Carter, then I know what type of time
Mm.
frame I'm looking at with you. If my if the president was Reagan, again, know what time frame I'm talking about with you. And so that to us is a very it's a question we use on every investigation because it allows us to narrow that focus
Oh,
and get a better timeline as to who we're trying to communicate, who we're communicating with.
because the idea is that those souls are stuck in the timeline at which they passed. Is that the
If-
perception or that is that the
right.
idea? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Or that's where that's what they're perceiving as time right now.
Yeah.
So one of those two things. Yeah.
Wow. So the historic Scott County Jail, I'd love to know this. You've set it up as a museum, but you do have it open for paranormal tours. And
Mhm.
you also have a resident kitty named
Yes.
Sally.
Yes.
who I
Ellie the jail
find-
cat. She's our
yeah, we saw
girl.
there. I saw there earlier.
Hmm.
And Sally lives at the jail.
She does. Yep.
Does she go on investigations with people? And can she tune into kind of what's happening paranormally that maybe you are picking up at the same time on the technology that you're using? Or, I mean, what's it been like? I'm curious because cats are
Uh,
kind of like a portal to the other side.
Yep, yep. So let me just set this up. So again, historic Scott County Jail in Huntsville, Tennessee. This is a museum that my business partner and best friend Miranda Young and I opened in 2021. And so we do have daytime tours. So it's set up as a full museum. It's 3 stories. So you
Hmm.
can go through during the day and do a history tour. We also have an audio tour that you can listen to as you go through. But then at night we have guided ghost hunts. We also have paranormal investigations. We have flashlight tours and such. And so I mean, we've had over 150 teams here
Hmm.
investigate this location. We're now one of the top 5 haunted locations in Tennessee. And so about a year and a half ago, during the day, we were sitting here, we had the door propped open, and this little cat walked in. And so Miranda, my business partner, sat down and talked with her, had a conversation and said, if you're good, if you're going to be a good cat, and be well, do well with our guests and stuff and well with our spirits, we're going to allow you to stay. And she's
So
fantastic.
this was a stray cat.
Yep. She just walked in the door and kind of like she owned the place, and absolutely have fallen in love with her. She is the best little thing. She's become our mascot. She's head of guest relations. She has her own Instagram account. And so we had that conversation with her, and I know this may sound funny to people, but we had the conversation with her. You've got to be a good cat. And then we had a conversation with our spirits. Listen, Sally is going to live here. She's going to be here on site day in and day out. You've got to get along with her. Don't scare her. She's not going to scare you. And it's been a great relationship, really.
Wow.
Now she'll go upstairs to the third floor, which is our maximum security floor. And there'll be times where she's batting the air, like somebody's trying to play with her. There's been other times where she'll lay down and roll over, like somebody's petting her belly. Now, there are times where she just refuses to come upstairs and say, nope, I'm not going to go upstairs today. And that is absolutely fine. She doesn't have to go upstairs if she doesn't want to. But we do think that the spirits have a really good relationship with her. And one thing that we did capture, which is kind of interesting, is each of these cells. I mean, I'm not sure if you can notice this door back here. So this is our visitation room. Behind me here, this goes out to, there are 3 different cells behind me. And they're not barred doors. They're solid steel doors, kind of like this one. So one of those cells we have set up as our gift shop, and Sally loves to go in and lay on our t-shirts. And a lot of people don't like to buy t-shirts with Sally hair. And so during the night, we have that door shut. It's a 250-pound steel door. She's a 12-pound cat. So we have the door shut so she cannot go in at night and lay on our t-shirts and our merchandise. We have a security camera set up in that room as well. But she wants to go in there. Like when we close it and we're here, she'll cry. She wants to go in. So about 4 weeks ago, on a Thursday morning at about 5 a.m, the door opens and something pushes Sally in and closes the door.
Wow.
And so the way we perceive it is that she wanted in, and the spirit was like, okay, I got you, girl. Here, I'm going to put you in, and shut the door. Because I mean, she cried on the security camera. She does cry, but it's not her I'm scared cry. It's her like, all right, I'm in, thanks for letting me in type of thing. So that was a very interesting piece of equipment, or a piece of evidence that we captured. And again, I think it leads to the fact that they have a good relationship. The spirit knew she wanted in, just open it up for her and let her go, and then shut it. Because there's no way she could open that door. None.
Wow. There's maybe a collegiality, right? I mean, animals play such a special role in people's life, throughout since the dawn of time. I just think it's really special that she's working with those still that are in spirit. So
yep. And then we've had 2 different teams here, and now if a team because one of us, either Miranda or myself, we stay on site during the night. We're in a little room. So in case something happens, we're here for emergency purposes or whatever, but we don't go out and investigate with any of the teams. But there have been several teams that have asked if Sally can go with them. So we let her go. If she wants to go, she'll go up with them. And twice, the teams have gotten something saying, here, kitty, kitty, which is kind of interesting.
That Sally is my hero. I mean,
she is. She's such a good girl.
So cool. I think that is maybe a new trend you're starting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you're right though. I don't think that this would work in every paranormal location with an animal, right? I think that setting those clear boundaries is really important. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Sally.
and for us, because it was a little bit different. I think being paranormal investigators and then opening the location, we knew kind of how we needed this to work, and what paranormal investigators need to have a successful investigation and what they like. And so I think because we go in and we talk to our spirits, we let them know what's coming up. Every time there's a team here, we go up and sit with them, okay, and say, here, this is the team name that's coming. This is how many people will be here. This, how many guys, how many girls, or whatever. And we have a very candid conversation with them about, this is what they're going to ask you, be responsive. They're not going to hurt you or try to provoke you in any way. And I think because of that, we have a very good rapport with our spirits. And I think they have that rapport with Sally as well.
How many resident spirits do you have that you've communicated with at the jail?
We know of at least 6.
Wow.
And there are others, I think, that kind of come and go. But the core that we get a lot of communication out of, as well as paranormal investigators, really, I don't want to say you can count on these spirits to show up every investigation, but typically these are the ones that are showing up on every investigation. They're getting some type of response from these 6.
You said something a little earlier about how you stay on site during a paranormal investigation, but you're not with them as
Correct.
they navigate the jail.
Mhm.
Has there been any, I might be inferring something here, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Has there been anything that has happened that would be a cause for a concern at the jail, that not the reason you would stay there, but that,
No.
I guess, just that
Honestly,
you're available, right?
yeah. So the reason we stay here is because we actually lease the jail from the town of Huntsville, and that is part of our
Oh,
lease, that we will have a presence here, that we don't
got
allow,
it.
investigators to, for lack
Just
of a
free
better
reign.
term,
Yeah.
run amok. And so we're here, and because we're a very rural community, and if an emergency were to take place, we need to be on site to be able to handle that.
That makes sense.
Not so much from a paranormal standpoint, but somebody tripping and falling down 3 flights of stairs, right?
Right.
That's something that we need to be on site with immediately. So we like to say that we're on site but out of sight.
That's funny. That was my biggest concern in the investigation I did, was my feet, and making sure that I had light on my feet. So we had 5 flights of stairs. I was worried about falling, and
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, that's a real concern that you maybe don't think about when you don't have light, right?
Right, right. And it's a
Um,
bigger concern when you're carrying the insurance. So
yeah, right. It's a big deal. So I would like to ask specifically, I hadn't thought about this, and I hadn't seen it on some of your investigations, but you might have done it. Have you done any investigation work in Salem, Massachusetts?
No, no. We've been to Salem as tourists, but not as investigators. I
Yeah.
love that place, but
Yeah,
no,
it's
not.
so amazing.
Yeah, it's our biggest thing when we do investigations is
Mhm.
logistics, honestly,
Sure.
because obviously we all have daytime jobs, and then I don't fly with any of our equipment. That's just me, and so we
Mhm.
drive to every. I mean, if we go out to Iowa, if we go out to Utah, Colorado, we're driving, and so that's kind of our commitment, and so it does take a lot of time, and so it's
Yeah, that makes
really
sense.
logistics that
Yep.
we haven't been there yet.
I'd like to know about your investigation. I mean, you can just give me high level, but the Lizzie Borden house, because I'm sure there's people that will really be interested in that. And then Gettysburg is a personal interest of mine.
Mhm.
I will get there someday. But what was it like there on your investigation? I know two disparate thing, a battlefield and a place where a lot of people were murdered. But
Yeah, no, I mean, Lizzie Borden is one that's fascinated everybody. I mean, if you're a paranormal
yes,
investigator, that is on your bucket list. Now, that
right,
is in Massachusetts, right? That's in
yeah.
Fall Rivers, Mass. And for those of you who don't know, this is the site of the 1892 murder of Andrew and Abby Borden. And the prime suspect in that murder and those murders was Lizzie Borden.
Mhm.
And they killed in the house. Lizzie Borden was arrested. She was put on trial, but she was acquitted of the murders. And for us, first, the history of the building itself, or the house itself, is just fascinating, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we get to have this very tangent and um, you know tactile experience with this house.
Yeah,
I mean, we're touching the doorknobs that Lizzie Borden touched. So for us, that in and of itself is fascinating.
right.
When you go into the house, if you've seen it on television or TV shows, it's much different than it looks. It's very disconjointed.
Oh,
like when you go upstairs, you've got to go through 2 bedrooms to get to the back stairs, to get to a bathroom. The way the stairs, so if you walk in the main doorway, and you go to the right, that's the stairs, and it's kind of like a half curve up.
Hmm.
And right as you get to about the middle of the stairs, you can see the landing, and you can see into Abby's room where her body was found. And it's much smaller than you think. And so you start to wonder, how could this have happened without, the maid Bridget Sullivan really hearing anything, or anybody out on the street really hearing anything? And so for us, just being in the environment in and of itself was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got there, there were 5 of us on this investigation, again, all females. And as soon as we were crossing that threshold, like I said, we had our voice recorders going. So we had 4 or 5 of them that we deployed immediately into different rooms. And we're still carrying in luggage and stuff because we actually
Were
stayed
you
the
the
night
only
there.
ones there?
Yep, we're the only ones there.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep, only people there. And so we got there, I think, about 4 in the afternoon on a Friday. And again, only people there, 5 of us, voice recorders are being deployed, da-da-da-da. And 3 of us were upstairs, and Jenny and Cara were sitting in the parlor where Andrew Borden was killed. And they're just talking about the day. And then they start talking about the differences in the Villisca axe murder house and the Lizzie Borden house, because we had investigated Villisca before. And Cara makes the statement. She said, either way, being axed to death would be a horrible way to die. And a man's voice said it was. We captured that on the voice recorder. A man's voice came through and said it was. So very intelligent. We do think that is Andrew Borden. They did not hear it in the moment, but it interjected like it was listening to the conversation. So if you go back and listen to our video or watch our video, you can hear it. At another time during the evening, Jenny and Michelle were kind of talking back and forth. Again, just casual conversation about the day. And Jenny's standing there while Michelle is in the parlor area. And a man says, the voice recorder picked up a man saying, "I'm standing right here next to you." She didn't hear it, but again, a very audible EVP that we captured on that voice recorder. During the night upstairs, we heard children laughing. We also had various pieces of equipment that were going off upstairs on that 3rd floor. And then we were all upstairs, all 5 of us were in the room where the maid Bridget Sullivan stayed, and the door was shut. And Miranda had a K2 meter, and she's putting it down on the floor, and she says, "Here's another K2 that you can play with." And a man's voice out in the foyer said, "Ignore them." And we all heard it. And Jenny she was closest to the door. She whipped open the door just to make sure that nobody was there. And of course there wasn't. So those were kind of some of the things that happened during that night. It was a fascinating investigation.
Did you stay the night there?
We did. We did.
Wow. Now, do you do an investigation like all night long, or are you awake? Do you close your eyes and sleep? Like how does
Yeah,
that
we slept.
You
we
did
slept.
sleep. Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, we got there about 4 in the afternoon, and we investigated till, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the morning. And by that time you're just spent. It's like, everybody, good night. So we all stayed there. And then what's interesting about the Lizzie Borden house is, when you stay there and you rent the entire house, the next morning, the docents will come in and they cook breakfast, and the breakfast they cook is the exact same breakfast that was the last meal for Andrew and Abby Borden.
Wow.
So it was actually fantastic, but it's kind of that other little piece of like that other little piece of history. But again, for us, just the historical narrative of it. A lot of people, when they think of Lizzie Borden, they think of the nursery rhyme.
Right.
But a lot of people don't take it further. And for me, what was interesting about that case is, first of all, she was 32 when the murders happened. And a lot of people think she was probably, that she was younger. But she was 32 when it happened. And after she was acquitted, she never left Fall River, right? Even though she was ostracized, she stayed in that town. And just the entire investigation in and of itself was fascinating. Again, the fact that she stayed in Fall Rivers until she was 66. And then she left all of her money to the Animal Rescue League of Fall River. Just to follow that story out, to me was fascinating. And that's the type of stuff that we love to do.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing light to to, you know, places that I
Mhm.
think maybe are a little over sensationalized with
Mhm.
some of these paranormal investigations. So I think it is important to tell the story.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we really enjoy.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what about Gettysburg?
I love Gettysburg. I mean,
Yes.
if you have an experience that you do need to go at some point, it's
Mhm.
just, and not even for the paranormal, just to stand
Mm.
there, and look out over these fields and just think of what happened there in 1863, right? I mean, 51,000 people lost their
Yeah.
lives, on that battlefield, and just to stand there, um, it, for that very reason is amazing.
Mhm.
Now we've stayed in the Farnsworth Hotel,
Mhm.
had some great evidence there. Captured a little child's voice that we were able to hear on the audio recorder.
Oh.
So a little bit of movement in the hallway that you can hear on the voice recorder as well. Um, just like I said, just going to some of the different battlefields and stuff, you just feel that something is there with you, that you're not really alone. Going to the
Mhm.
cemeteries, you kind of get that same feeling as well.
Wow. I'm curious about if you feel anything when you are at any of these sites. This will kind of
Mhm.
make a segue into my next question.
It
When you are in a space that you know has a lot of spirits, do you
Mhm.
feel anything in your body?
Something like Gettysburg, absolutely. When we go to some of these different locations, for me, I started noticing pretty quickly that if something is about to happen, either an EVP or an apparition or something, this is going to sound weird, but my left leg starts to
Hmm.
kind of tingle a little bit, kind of
Oh
like when
wow.
your foot falls asleep.
Hmm.
That's just something that I kind of picked up on. I don't really act much on it, but
Sure.
it's kind of like, okay, I think we're going to get a response here, or I think we're going
Wow.
to see something or hear something here. But if you're in a place like Gettysburg, everything is like that. It's just you're walking down the streets and you're like, wow, the Union Army marched through here, the Confederate soldiers marched through here. I mean, this was used as a field hospital. So your
Yeah.
entire experience at Gettysburg, I mean, if you're not there for, to your point, the sensationalism aspect of it, just to
Right.
be there, you absolutely feel almost immersed in the
Mm.
past.
Yeah.
And so that's
It's
why I love it so much.
palpable.
It
Yeah, it's
absolutely is.
palpable.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely
In
is.
some of the battlefields I've been to, like the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is in,
Oh, that place is
Montana.
awesome.
It
Mhm.
is
I love
palpable
that
there.
place.
I mean, it
Yes.
is, you can
Mhm.
really, really feel
Uh-huh.
the emotions at some of these
Absolutely.
places. Yeah, which is
Alamo,
interesting.
the same way. If you
Oh,
go
yeah, I
if you
haven't
go
been
into the
there.
Alamo,
Yes.
you just kinda stand there and just take it in, and, it's sometimes it's a shame, the tourist
Mhm.
aspect of it, you kinda,
Right.
go into this little mindset of, man, why is this tourist place here? But if you can kind of get away from that and kind of
Right.
just put yourself back in that historical time period, it really does. You feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really the beauty of it. I think a lot of people are looking for an experience. They're looking for something either to be scared or spooked, or when really if you just stop and just listen and tune
Hmm.
in what's happening in your body, how are you feeling in the moment? And really that the historical piece is what's so fascinating for me
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you ensure your safety in some of these places where there are malevolent entities or negative entities that are tricky. Let's just put it that way.
Well, Karen, I'll tell you, we've gone to so many different locations,
Yeah.
over 3 dozen of the most reportedly haunted locations in the country, and we've never felt anything like that. We've never
Mm,
felt anything malicious, evil, negative. Now, I will say that there are locations where you feel something a little bit darker, and by
yeah.
darker, I just mean that it doesn't want you in its space, and I can
Right.
respect that, right?
Right.
You go into places like jails or prisons, you're
Mhm.
not dealing with the best of people in life, right? These
Right.
aren't environments where there were great people, and so you feel that, right? It's kind of permeated into the walls.
Mhm.
But we do say a prayer of protection when we go in. We do say one when we come out, and what we do is we go in to the location and we say, "This is," for example, I say, "My name is Kristy. We're here to tell your story. You're not allowed to hurt me in any way. You're not allowed to touch me in any way unless I give you permission to do so. And we're here just to sit and have a conversation with you. You're not allowed to come home with us. And we're here to respect you. We're not going to try to provoke you. We're not going to try to get you to cross over in any way. We recognize that this is your space. If you want to talk to us, these are the methods that you can use to do so. If not, we understand that as well. And so that's really how we handle that location. I think because we go in with that level of respect, we kind of get that respect in return. Now, for example, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. There is an entity that is in the auditorium that is supposed to be darker. And how we handled that was I walked in, I said, I understand that this is your space. We're not going to interfere with you tonight. I've got a voice recorder here. If you want to communicate with us, you can speak into this voice recorder. If not, I completely understand. We're going to leave this to your space tonight and we're not going to come into your room. And that's how we respect that. I mean, it's a huge campus. So there's so many other places that we can investigate that night. We don't have to go in and barge in to try to get this thing to talk to us if it doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, for us, it's really trying to dispel that sensationalism myth that everything is demonic, because it's not. It's not like that at all.
Right. No, I am in full agreement with you. And having done one recently myself, it is really important that you have a good practice around, what is your protection, the grounding. You're grounded, your energy is grounded, that you don't go in there and what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, that you're not trying to stir up things that don't need to be there. I had no problems after that investigation where there has been reports of darker energy. I've had no problem since then. So,
well, for some reason, dark sells right now. And that's why, that's why these YouTubers and these TikTokers, again, if that's how you want to do your investigation, go for it. But, it's not how we're going to do our investigation. And it's not how we're going to allow people to do the investigations here. We've had a lot of, quote unquote, famous YouTubers and TikTokers that we know their reputation. And we have, as soon as you sign up for paranormal investigation, you acknowledge that you are not going to say that anything here is demonic or negative, or we will sue you for libel and slander. I mean, we put the kibosh on it immediately because it's not here. It's not here, and you're not going to use this location. And our spirits, who we are very protective of, you're not going to use those for a platform to get likes and subscribes on a social media channel. And so I think, again, not to disparage any other location, not to disparage any team or YouTuber or TikToker that wants to do that. It's just not how we do it.
Yeah, I think I really value that so much, because there's so much darkness in the world as it is. And, when you prey on people's fears about things that they don't often understand, and the paranormal is something that a lot of people don't understand, you can really take people down the wrong path. So I appreciate that you're taking that responsibility around what people can't do in the Scott County Jail. That's really important.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you have a really entertaining YouTube channel. I kind of got lost in it. It's takes kind of a documentary kind of feel to some of the things. I love the historical aspect. I think that's why I was so drawn to who you are and the work that you do, because that's what fascinates me as well. So you produced a little mini documentary called Landmarks, Legends, and Lore, and it is so fascinating. So was this a special interest project, or is it something else? Do you have something more coming? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, well, we do have more coming. I have several in the editing board right now. I really, there's a lot of places that we would love to go to and investigate all of these different places. But there are some that we just can't get to. And really what I wanted to do was highlight some of these locations that have a haunting reputation, that, maybe can't be investigated, or we can't get there, but that people are fascinated by. So, for example, one of the ones that we do is haunting bridges. And, we're from Central Florida. So one of the bridges there is Oviedo, and the claims are the Oviedo lights. And that really that's one of the ones that kind of got me started to think about this, because these are hometown little legends and lore that not many people know about. And we wanted to take the audience there to these locations. So, we talk about the Oviedo Lights and why they're significant there. And we talk about Sachs Bridge and Gettysburg and the historical reports and the haunting reports there as well. Really just to kind of highlight these different locations or these different stories that people overall might not know about. Haunting aviation. Aviation to me is fascinating. So we did haunting aviation. So we talked
Oh,
about
I haven't watched that one. Yeah.
yeah, so we talked about Amelia Earhart and Patsy Cline and the Apollo 1 when that exploded, and
Yes.
Flight 401 and Flight 191. We talked about those, and
Were those over the Bermuda Triangle? Flight
no,
191?
Flight 191 was taking off from Chicago O'Hare in 1979, and there was a mechanical malfunction. So right at takeoff, it just went up about 30 or 40 feet, turned and crashed and killed everybody on board.
Wow.
So the haunting reports of that, I mean, there's several reports of that. After that, apparitions were seen in the boarding areas. They were seen in baggage claim. The spirit of a man is said to be making a phone call at one of the boarding gates. Just different things like that. And then Eastern Flight 401. This happened over the Everglades in 1972, and it was pilot error is really what it was. And so there was 101 people killed on that flight. And so some of the haunting reports that came out of that were, at that point, the parts were recycled into other planes, and those other planes started seeing the spirit of the captain and the co-captain that were killed on the flight. So that's a fascinating story. So just to be able to tell these stories that are fascinating to me, and bringing the audience with us on these journeys, that's really what Landmarks, Legends, and Lore was about, to tell some different hometown or backyard legends, if you will, that people overall might not know about.
Wow, that's great. Do you have any things in the works, like a TV show upcoming that you'd want to even share about right now?
Yeah, not so much TV show. I will say we have been under production with a couple of production companies, or under contract with a couple of production companies, but obviously that doesn't work out for a majority of the people, and that's fine. That's definitely not why we're here. But I do have 2 more Landmarks, Legends, and Lores in the works.
Okay, cool.
Right now we're just with the jail and another project that we're working on with the historic village of Rugby. It just takes a lot of time, and that's kind of the problem.
They're really fun to get lost in. I hadn't watched the airplane one, but the bridges one I got lost in, and it was it's really fascinating. It's really interesting stuff. So
yeah, I love the aviation one. Thank you. The aviation one to me was a lot of fun. We've got haunting cemeteries as well. So some different legends from some different cemeteries around the country, which were fascinating to me. And then, like I said, I've got a couple of those in the works, and then we've got 2 investigations that we've done last year or earlier this year that I'm trying to get done and out there.
Wow, that's really exciting. So of all of the paranormal investigations that you've done, what's the most compelling evidence of any location that you have experienced that you said, wow, without a shadow of a doubt, there is something happening beyond everything that I can disprove?
Well, besides what we capture here on a daily basis,
yes,
historic Scott County Jail, I would say the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida, which is about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida. This little jail was built in 1928. It was in operation until 1968, and then it really sat vacant after that. They built a whole new county jail, and this building was just forgotten. And so we've investigated there several times. The first time I investigated there was with Miranda from Ghost Biker Exploration. She and I had collaborated on this investigation, and it was just the 2 of us. And so when we first got there, the woman who owned it, it's not in the best location. And so she said, do both of you carry? And we're like, yeah, we have handguns. We both carry, we're
Mhm.
licensed to carry.
Yep.
And she said, I highly recommend that you keep your guns with you on at all times during this investigation.
That's an interesting way to start.
Yeah, because that's the type of area that we're in, right?
Wow.
So we started again, just the two of us in this building, and we started the investigation, and we'd set up all types of different pieces of equipment that night. And first hour or so, we weren't feeling anything. Again, nothing was alarming. So Miranda says, "I wonder if they think we're law enforcement because we have our guns on us."
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I said, "Well, let's try taking them off." So Miranda put her gun down on a bunk in one of the cells that we were standing in. And I was taking mine off. No, I'm sorry. I took mine off first, and then Miranda take hers off. And as she's doing it, she says, "I'm going to put it down nice and slowly." And a man behind us says, "Good." And we both heard it. It was
Woo!
captured on audio. And then honestly, Karen, after that, the night was on.
Wow.
Everything that we had was absolutely confirming other things that we were getting. REM pods were going off, disembodied voices. We were both touched. We saw shadow figures. We heard footsteps. We captured them on audio. Miranda has an SLS camera, and we are capturing some interesting disembodied figures on the SLS camera.
Wow.
So for me, that was, if I could call an investigation a perfect investigation, it was that investigation, because like I said, everything was validating
Wow.
every other thing. And it was fascinating, just a fascinating investigation.
So, I mean, whew, that's a lot happening in one night.
It was.
Do you? I'm curious, and we'll kind of round out the conversation here. Do you ever? Is there anything that really spooks you, or where you go, okay, I'm done, or we need to wrap this up, where you just are? It's kind of overwhelming for everything that's gone on in the night, where you just are like, I'm done.
Honestly, we've never really felt that. Now, don't get me wrong. There'll be times where you're startled or you have that moment of trepidation for sure.
Yeah.
Like you can't see a shadow figure or hear a door slam or something like that. But really, to us, it's more fascinating than anything. Like I said, there'll be times where we'll say, okay, we need to step out of this space. I don't think whatever's in here wants us here, so we're going to step out of this space. But I can honestly say we've never run out of a location screaming. We've never vowed to never go back to a location. For us, everything that we capture or see or feel or sense is just building that research that we're trying to conduct.
That's wonderful. That's fascinating. Are you writing a book by chance?
I am.
Oh, that's great.
It is in loose notebook form everywhere. It's like so many things. You have all of these projects that you've got on the the table here, trying to get them all created and published and edited and all this other stuff. And it just takes time. But yeah, the bones are there. I just need to flesh it out and get it done.
You have a lot of compelling stories and evidence and a very grounded perspective. I really appreciate that. It's it's refreshing to hear the non-sensationalized piece of this. And that's really what I'm drawn to with your work. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
How can people get in touch with you if they're in your neck of the woods, and how can people find you on the internet?
Well, the website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. We're also very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal, and then on YouTube under Soul Sisters Paranormal. If you're interested in the historic Scott County Jail, it's www.historicscottcojail.com. Again, very active on Facebook under Historic Scott County Jail. And if you're interested in Sally, she does have an Instagram account. It's Sally the Jail Cat. Or you can just stop by the Historic Scott County Jail here in Huntsville, Tennessee, and meet her in person.
That's great. I'll link all of that in the show notes when the episode goes live. I've got to follow Sally. This is pretty awesome.
Yes, she is an awesome girl.
So how close, just real quick, how close to, what's the nearest big airport to Huntsville, Tennessee?
Knoxville. So Knoxville's about 45 minutes to an hour away, Knoxville.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much, and you're a wealth of knowledge. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Grounded Guidance podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving a review. Your feedback helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, stay grounded, stay guided, and keep stretching your edges to think differently. Take care, my friends.